Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Monday, July 21st, 2025. And Noel, this one's for you. I did not realize that the recording, when I pushed record on my setup here, it did not start recording for about 10 or 12 seconds. I didn't know that. So if you look at all of the previous, Noel has been emailing me telling me that I'm not saying the date at the beginning of my show. And I've been saying the date at the beginning of my show, and I didn't realize that the recordings have been cutting that off. So I'm trying to dial it in, everybody. I apologize. So today is Monday, July 21st, 2025, and wild and crazy things are going on. Trump is going after Obama. So in 2011, Obama was at a White House Correspondents' Dinner, and he made fun of Trump, and Trump was very, very angry, very, very angry. And you could see Trump was very angry, but he held himself together. The composure was there. And it was that dinner that started Donald Trump on the path of where we see him today. And so we're gonna go through history, where Trump was in 2011, where Trump was in 2016, and where Trump is now. And it's very interesting because it seems like the shoe is on the other foot. And that's something that is very interesting to me to watch, because I've been watching this whole thing since 2016, and it was crazy then, and it's crazier now. So holy smoke. Fiscal mess. Carney's fiscal mess, Trudeau's fiscal mess. Why isn't anyone held accountable for creating fiscal messes? And why do you think that the Canadian electorate had a fiscal mess created by Justin Trudeau, and then we elected exactly the same parliament, exactly the same? Why do you think that would happen? I don't know. Speculation. It's rigged. It's totally rigged. 200 plus candidates in Battle River Crowsfoot. Wild. Absolutely wild. They are going to have at least 100 candidates. I've heard 200 candidates, and people are upset. And Elections Canada, get this, is asking for more candidates. Do you want to be a candidate in Battle River Crowsfoot? Because get in the pool. Water's warm. There's 200 people in here. Anybody else? 300, 400, why not 500? Found the 13-minute missing clip from the Mike Benz on Epstein. So if you watched the 2 hours yesterday, sorry, I've got the 13 minutes. I haven't watched it yet. I've watched a little bit of it. And I've got, at the end of the show, a bunch of different documentaries I'm kind of in the middle of watching. Each one's interesting and interesting stuff. Invasions have been coordinated by NGOs, and we've got some color on that, or some more information on that. And by invasions, I mean the refugee system and the settlement system meant to protect people who are in danger had NGOs QBing the decisions about which people would come, how they would get here, chartering flights, getting hotels, all this kind of stuff. And it seems improper. And that's weird. Why are NGOs coordinating all of these people coming into the United States? And I think by extension, this is a model that Canada is using as well. So we're going to look at that. CPC MP has spoken out against the lawfare being used on Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. And that's notable because nobody else in the CPC has spoken up about it at all. And so that's really interesting. Why is everybody so quiet about this whole Tamara Lich, Chris Barber, and the Crown, the government, the state wanting almost 10 years for mischief while they allow violent criminals out same day with bail, right? And they don't go after these violent criminals for any other kind of punishment or anything like that. They pretty much let them out, and that's that. And that's wild. It's unacceptable, completely unacceptable. Anyway, there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. Noel, I hope you got the date this morning. Mario says, Canadian citizens, Tamara Lich is facing 7 years for nonviolent protest. Chris Barber is facing 2 years for destruction of his truck for nonviolent protest. I heard that he was facing 8 years, not 2 years. I heard it was 8. Immigrants, Manpreet Gill, involved in liquor store robbery, wrong way Highway 401 crash, and killed 4, including a baby, got 5.5 months. Sentence kept under 6 months to avoid automatic deportation. Ash Kumar Kant tried to buy sex from a 15-year-old, got house arrest. Judge didn't want to delay his citizenship. And Samarpreet Singh exposed himself for 20 minutes inside a woman's home while installing the internet. House arrest. Judge cited deportation risk. Ask yourself this. Why? Because they're trying to punish citizens, and they're trying to replace us as a population using India as a seed ground? Just guessing. This is what it looks like. Here's Dean Allison He's an MP for Niagara West, and he says this is insanity. He's responding to Tamara Lich's July 19th tweet talking about how 7 years for myself and 8 years, I was right, for Chris Barber. And so Dean says this is insanity. This Liberal government treats actual real criminals better than this. Steal a car, no problem. Home invasion, no problem. Murder a grandmother, no problem. Exploit children, no problem. This country is run by useful idiots. Ooh, he goes after it. And right at the end, it's like watching Mr. T and what's his name? Jake Paul, right? Because, not Mr. T. Mike Tyson, Mr. T versus Jake Paul would be very good. I pity the fool. Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. And I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that Mike Tyson wasn't going hard there, because I'm pretty sure Mike Tyson would chew him up and spit him out, right? Personally, regardless of what we saw. Eva Chippick says, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber were only charged with mischief and a few other minor offenses and ultimately convicted of mischief, a charge about as serious as doing a burnout in a parking lot. Yet before they even stepped into a courtroom, they were publicly branded as insurrectionists and terrorists. These are serious accusations, ones they were never charged with, let alone convicted of. Let's not pretend the sub judice rule is actually being followed. The sub judice rule, I'm getting this terribly wrong, is the rule regarding, I think it's regarding politicians not speaking out about things that are before the court. The mischief trial has been the longest mischief trial in history. The politicians are tied up with this excuse because they want to be, because the court's giving them that excuse, because the court's taking forever to do this for one reason or another, right? And so I think her talking about this is interesting to me. She says this rule is meant to protect the integrity of ongoing legal proceedings, but it does not ban all discussion. Fair and accurate reporting of court facts is allowed. General comments on related policies or issues are also allowed, as long as they don't create a real and substantial risk of interfering with the outcome. Still, politicians routinely misuse sub judice. I'm getting that terribly wrong. I'm sorry. Not to protect the courts, but to avoid accountability. They invoke it as an excuse to stay silent on controversial issues, especially when it involves their own failures. That silence is political, not legal. And yet, in this case, there was no hesitation to speak. Politicians, lawyers, and even judges go ahead on the facts and pushed a narrative that was never supported by the law. This is not justice. This is political theater. This was not a routine criminal trial. It was politically motivated. A government refused to listen to its citizens. Institutions failed. Policing broke down. The result was mismanagement, incompetence, and a response so heavy-handed it became an international embarrassment. And still, no one in power stood up to correct the record. That silence speaks volumes, because when truth takes backseat to politics and protecting your image matters more than being honest with the public, you don't just lose credibility, you erode the foundation of democracy. Yeah, and all of these politicians, and I talked about it yesterday, I think it's bullshit that Danielle Smith has stayed silent on the Coots 4, on Artur Pawlowski, on this, on all of this stuff, on Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, et cetera, et cetera. And not just Danielle Smith, Doug Ford, all the premiers should be speaking out about this. We have criminals being allowed out, criminals who they reasonably suspect may kill again, and they let them out. And yet Chris Barber and Tamara Lich are facing years in prison because they dared to embarrass the government. It is beyond the pale, and these people need to speak up. And if they're too weak to speak up, then they're too weak to be leaders. That's that. Andy Lee says, what is happening to Tamara and Chris could have just as easily happened to me or anyone that's found themselves on the wrong side of our government. This should scare you all. Yeah, they want to go after people like me who speak about this kind of stuff on the internet in an unfiltered way, or in a way that is not influenced by their money, because I don't take their money. The only money I take from this is from subscribers and a little bit of advertising money on the free show, but it's not even close to what I make on the subscribers. And so I work for the subscribers of my channel, and I try and put out a show that is as honest as I can tell it, with as much proof as I can show you for why I'm saying what I'm saying. And then I encourage you to go and check it out. And they hate that. They don't want me to encourage you to think for yourself. They want to paint me as somebody who tells you lies and tells you not to believe anybody else. But please go and listen to what other people are saying, and then compare that to what you know, and then make up your own mind. I'll see you tomorrow, right? Like, they're not telling the truth. Holy cow. Are they ever not telling the truth? And so truth telling all by itself is a separator, right? Like, I try and tell you a semblance of the truth that I can gather and show you. And there are things that I cut, right? Whereas the newspapers are being told a narrative to sell you, and they tell you, don't listen to anybody else. They're misleading you. It's disinformation. And that's not working anymore. People don't care. And so they're trying to make laws to shut people like me down, right? And these laws are meant to freeze speech. I'm meant to take this and understand that if I say the wrong thing, they could come and take me away, right? And sure, we live in Canada, but man, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, right? If you get my meaning. So yeah, this should scare you all. It really, really should. And scary. It's scary. Pascal says, what has changed so drastically in Canada to cause such a sharp rise in crime in only 10 years? How much crime has risen in Canada in the past 10 years? This is the source is Statistics Canada, but I have not verified that. But I've heard some of these numbers in the past couple of weeks, just bandying around different news articles and things like that. And so I think this is accurate, but double check. Think for yourself, everyone. How much has crime risen in the past 10 years in Canada? Homicide's up 33%. Auto theft is up 39%. That's lower. That's lower than I thought, because we had a full-blown auto theft crisis in Ontario, right? So theft over $5,000 is up 49%. Identity theft is up 121%. Also lower than I expected it to be, because if you have 100 people experiencing identity theft in Canada and 200 people experience it, well, that's a 100% increase, right? So it sounds more than it actually is. Same thing. We have a population of 40 million. So if 3,000 people are experiencing identity theft and now 6,000 people are experiencing identity theft, it's less than 1% of the population maybe. But it sounds big when they put it into the frame of percentages, right? And so that's why they do that. I'd love to hear instances, how many instances, and see just instance numbers, right? If there was one homicide and now there's 3 homicides, that's a lot different than a 33% rise, right? Like, I mean, different, yes, but scale wise, people put it on a different scale. 33% of 200, right? That's more. So, and I mean, what's the homicide rate in Toronto? How many people are killed in Toronto? 100, 200 a year, right? So, and extrapolate across Canada, how much can it be? Anyway, I digress. Firearms crimes, 136%. Child sexual abuse, 141%. Human trafficking, 210%. Extortion, 429%. That's actually a little less than I thought it would be too, because the extortion thing seems to be a big deal these days. There are a whole bunch of gangs that are based out of India that this extortion racket seems to be a huge payer, and they're trying to do it in Canada, and the extortion rings are getting shut down, but it's belated. It takes time for the police to map the ring and so on and so forth. So you hear about an extortion ring and then the police take it down, and then by the time they take it down, another ring's operating somewhere, and then the process starts over. So that's wild. Child pornography up 565%. I have a feeling it's just more people are looking. I don't know that this has gotten worse by that much. I just think more people are looking and finding it. Again, it's very high, but I'd be interested in the instances, the number of instances. Here's an interesting thread, and this thread is talking about money, and it basically says, my own suspicion is just about everybody involved in finance has no clue what money even is. Someone said money is like time. Everyone knows what time is, but what is time? That's a much more difficult question. We're using a tool that itself has no yardstick. So money, one of the reasons people don't understand money and why the government is bad is that they devalue, we pay a tax, an invisible tax through inflation and devaluation of our money. And so at one point, our money could buy us an unbelievable amount. We got unbelievable value for money. The $5 bill from 1981 would buy a lot more than a $5 bill in 2025. And a $5 bill in 1960 would buy a lot more than a $5 bill in 1980, right? So, but less of a spread. And so the money is being devalued. People don't understand why that's happening in a practical sense. They just think that they're getting behind. But practically, it's the government spending that's causing this negative outcome. And it's an interesting thread in and of itself, and we should pay attention to it. But I thought this was interesting. This is one of the tweets in the thread. And same guy, he says, would you guys have anticipated what is happening in the UK today, once an extraordinary country, or Germany or France or Canada, or name it? None of us would have anticipated what's going on. So what's going on is, it looks like the collapse of Western civilization. It looks like I said, when did we start using cooked as a colloquialism? When did that start? And somebody explained it like, it looks like it's been in the oven a while, and it looks like that process is coming to an end. It's cooked. We're cooked. We're done, right? Like, bring us on out. We're ready for a communist revolution or whatever they're trying to initiate. And could you believe this could happen? And you don't really notice it until it's kind of done. And that's the point of this clip. He says, yeah, it's been in process for decades, and you didn't notice the superstructure that was building in the middle of your town because, you chose not to look, really, fundamentally. And I think that's an interesting point. A lot of people are choosing not to look.
And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth.
This is in relation to some comments that you made on a Facebook page.
You were witnesses saying, obviously, people, while they're over here, etc., we let them into our country, etc.
A woman has been arrested by Cheshire Police in relation to inaccurate information on social media.
Because someone has been caused, obviously, anxiety based upon your social media page. That's
not his.
Why you've been arrested.
In Russia last year, 400 people were arrested for things that they said on social media. How many people do you think were arrested in Britain for things they said on social media last year? Take a guess.
I have no idea.
3,300.
Really? Arrested for what they'd said on social media?
Yeah.
My goodness.
In Britain.
And we do have dedicated police.
How does this kind of stuff happen, right? It's wild. Dedicated police scouring social media for people who say the wrong thing. How dare you? This is insane. 312 illegal migrants staying in hotels have been charged with 708 crimes in the past 3 years. These hotels are supposed to stimulate the economy, and we're paying billions to turn them into crime hotspots. I fear what we saw in Epping is just the start. Yeah. Yep. It's an invasion. And once things turn ugly, well, it takes a little while to clean that up, if it ever gets cleaned up. I thought this was funny in the realm of crime and what's going on in our countries and in the United States. They have laws, squatter rights laws, and the mayor, his neighbor, had his house taken over by a squatter, and now the mayor's saying, hold on a second, we can't have this. So who's this person? I meme, therefore I am, says, oh, the irony. Democrats in Illinois who once backed laws that made it hard to remove squatters are now scrambling to reverse those laws. State Representative Marcus Evans is urging the governor to sign new legislation after squatters took over the house next door to his.
But to watch it up close, right on my own block, right here in Avalon Park, it's been wild.
Illinois State Representative Marcus Evans is getting a front row seat to what some are calling a crisis in Illinois. Earlier this week, alleged squatters moved into his next door neighbor's home. He says the whole block is outraged.
Surprised us all to take over these folks' property. Squatting, it shouldn't be allowed.
The real property owners, Linda Gomez and Rodrigo Leva, say they recently put this house on the market. When they came to check on it this week, they say the locks had been changed and a family they've never seen before moved inside.
They open and say, hey, this is my house. I say, no, excuse me, that's my house.
The couple recorded this video of the alleged squatter. They say the family initially claimed they had bought the house, but when police arrived, they changed their story, claiming they rented the home and signed a lease. Police ultimately said they couldn't remove the people inside and referred the homeowners to the eviction courts. That's the current process under Illinois law, and it can take months.
Right? Wild. Absolutely wild. And landlords and property owners in Canada don't have rights in the same way. It used to be a good business to have an extra house. You'd buy the extra house, make some money on the side. It was a good little side business, cash positive while you stacked an asset, right? The mortgage is paid off by the tenant and you pay for the maintenance. And then you have this asset that will pay you as long as you want to maintain it. It's a great little business model until somebody could just say, this is my house now. I'm not going to pay you rent. And you want to evict me? Screw you. And you can't do anything about it, right? So my buddy got out of being a landlord in the early 2000s. So did I. And that was that, right? Because he saw the writing on the wall. He had heard from other landlord friends of his in Toronto, and he said, it's coming to Guelph. I'm not going to play this game. And because he already had one person try and stiff him on rent. And he said, listen, there's a reason I get your parents' phone numbers, kid. So if you want to stiff me on rent, I'll be calling your parents and you can deal with that, because there's a whole process here that you don't quite seem to understand. And so he said, one time is enough for me. I'm done with that. And so he kicked that kid out and blah, 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 blah. But it is not a friendly environment to have a business like that, unfortunately. Here is Data Republican, and we're going to talk about the invasion ongoing. Our legal system is being structured to be sympathetic and very, very flexible for non-citizens or new Canadians, permanent residents, temporary foreign workers, however they get here, very, very flexible with them. But if a Canadian sneezes while jaywalking, That's 10 years, buddy. Sorry about your luck. You're 15 years for the lip that you gave me after I tried to arrest you for the sneeze and the jaywalk. Right? So the legal system is structured against Canadians, and other systems trying to get a job structured against Canadians in favor of all of these other populations that are seen as needing some kind of leg up. But that's not the job of the state. The state should not be engaging in that, because what's happening is, I wouldn't say unintended consequences. What's happening is affirmative action is anti-Canadian legislation, I think. Data Republican goes further and talks about this. She says, from the other thread, the more I think about this screenshot from International Organization for Migration, IOM, the more it disturbs me. I think the picture we have had of migrants is of desperate people fleeing war-torn countries on foot. I don't think any of us thought of refugee migration as a process which is coordinated and scheduled by NGOs, done with chartered flights. Who decides how to schedule the flights? Which countries to schedule them from? Which migrants to get these flights? The U.S. paid IOM $1 million for chartered flights of 12,000 Lebanon refugees in 2006, but there were nearly 1 million Lebanese refugees in total. How were the 12,000 chosen? And what's more, the document seems to lay responsibility for reception arrangements on the country of origin, and even seems to warn against returning migrants. All this strongly points to a globally coordinated effort, decades in the making, to set up an infrastructure to transport millions of refugees without any corresponding infrastructure for them to return home. This leads to the conspiracy thought that if this infrastructure for mass one-way migration in place was done knowingly, then destabilization of the country of origin may have been intentional as well. That's just horrid for everyone involved, migration and migrants and Westerners alike. Side note, the International Republican Institute, the official Republican Party soft power NGO, gave IOM grants. So what she's saying here is they're all in on this. Everybody's in on this. They're all in on the grift. And the people who lose are you and me and everybody else, right? And so, like, that's not great. That's not good. And so our country's being sold out from under us, without any real ability to fight back, because they're kind of hiding it under NGO payments and layers of bureaucracy and state security and so on and so forth. You're not allowed to know, citizen, and if you do know, that's pretty racist to say that it's not okay. Here's Chad. He says, diversity as a strength is a lie sold by those engineering your erasure. Our erasure. Ours. From our country, right? That they have control of right now. Weird. Joyce says diversity isn't your strength. It lowers your wages, marginalizes your culture, increases your crime, fills your hospitals, occupies your housing, ruins your schools, consumes your taxes, tightens your laws, restricts your freedoms, endangers your children, and calls you racist. Yeah, accurate on all counts. Absolutely accurate on all counts. So it's funny that if you notice that, you become part of the problem, right? Like Rutrow, they've noticed. Michael O'Keefe says, the most common question asked at the All-Ireland final in Dublin today, why are the security guards foreign? So there's the security guards in the All-Ireland final in Dublin, Ireland. They're all Indian. They're all Indians. So isn't that weird? That like in a football stadium with two Irish teams playing each other in Dublin, Ireland, don't you think the security force would not be a foreign security force? Or all one race, all Indian? Like, you'd think that it'd be a mix. There might be some people from Ireland and some people born in Ireland and some people born in other countries, because it's Dublin and it's a city a lot like Toronto. I've been to Dublin and I've been to Toronto, and the only difference between Dublin and Toronto is Dublin has an LRT instead of a subway, and it's just as efficient as Kitchener's LRT, which is to say it's not. And it has the Guinness brewery, and Toronto has Labatt's, and Labatt's isn't really a tourist attraction where the Guinness brewery is. That's it. That's pretty much it. And so I enjoyed my time in Dublin, but other than that, it's a very, very modern globalist city. That's why this is happening. But isn't it interesting to notice that, and to have an entire population of the stadium wonder the same out loud, right? The cracks are forming. People are saying, wait a second here. Isn't this Dublin, Ireland? Not Dublin, India? Kian is responding to this. So this is a free speech push. And I want people to understand. I was talking earlier in the show about how I work for my subscribers. I work for trying to paint a story of truthfulness that is as truthful and I can prove as possible, right? And so that's the whole point of my show. And they don't like my show. The powers that be don't like my show. I've been canceled on YouTube once and I got my channel back, but they're still removing subscribers from my channel. So it's not, and I don't think they're going to pay me very much, but whatever. It is what it is. They censor me, and I think it's very clear they censor me. But in addition to censoring me, they give grants on the other side to pay newspapers and other propaganda artists to lie to you and to tell you something else is the truth and to tell you other lies that you may want to hear too, comfortable lies, right? Lies that you're used to already. And you say, yes, I know that that's true, newspaper. Why are you reminding me that it's true by stating it again and again or whatever? And so these lies are baked in and funded by the government. And people don't get that. And sometimes they do get it, but they don't understand the extent, right? Where I don't make any money from the government. A whole bunch of newspapers make lots of money from the government in a whole bunch of different ways, directly by subsidy, but also through subscriptions, bulk subscriptions for the government to use, right? Like, oh, well, I use the Toronto Sun every morning. And so I need a subscription paid for by my employer to make sure I'm on top of the news, for the government of Canada. And so they pay for all of these things. And it's in the millions, right? Like there's lots of money to be made doing that. Wild and crazy stuff. Kian says, Juno News has never taken a dime of grant money from the feds, 0 sole source contracts, no benefits, and we are doing unbelievably well, growing every day faster than anyone. Why does anyone need grant money? Holly Doan says, the Hill Times in the past, from August 2024, Hill Times in the past 18 months received $120,000 in federal grants and benefits from $898,000 sole-sourced federal contract for news clippings that expires in 2025. Publishers also received undisclosed sums under a payroll rebate scheme that pays up to almost $29,750 per newsroom employee. The Hill Times says he's using us, the independent by-election candidates, say frustration getting louder over Poilievre parachuting into Alberta riding. He was born in Alberta, I'm pretty sure, right? Poilievre was, right? So the newspapers are being used against Poilievre while they're being paid subsidies. And Kian points out, why do you need subsidies? And I think that's the wrong lesson to learn. I noticed that the subsidies are being used to get preferential articles published in newspapers that may have an influence in the outcome of the election. And that's notable. That's something to notice, right? Holly Doan is responding to Patricia. Patricia says bulk subscriptions are a way for governments to subsidize any news organization. It's just a backdoor way to do it. And Holly Doan says Patricia has a point. For example, here's the Toronto Star's federal contract, $1.7 million. That's yearly, probably, I would imagine. And $1.7 million is nothing for the glowing news that the Toronto Star says about the government. And like for 1.7 million, the government doesn't care about that. 1.7 million, we send billions to Ukraine. We have no reason to send billions to Ukraine. So 1.7 million, they don't care about that. It's like a toenail clipping on the government, on the government budget. What budget? Stop it. Bernie says, surveillance in Ireland, it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing as happening in Canada. The Irish government is proposing a new law, the Communications Bill, the Communications Interception and Lawful Access Bill. This allows the Gardaí, which are the police, defense forces, and the police to intercept live messages on platforms like WhatsApp, iMessage, and Instagram. Privacy consigned to history, right? So Justice Minister prepares law to intercept criminals' messages, but it's unclear how Apple, Google, Meta, and ByteDance will respond. Criminals' messages, eh? That's what they're calling us now? Because yes, they're targeting everybody, not just, quote, criminals. And the criminals, they'll have a way around it. It's us suckers who try and do things above board who don't have any kind of way around it. Western Standard says, in-depth Privy Council office runs psychological unit to shape Canadians' behavior. And I'm shocked, I tell you. I'm absolutely shocked by the fact that they're running psychological behavior units and et cetera. In-depth, despite its growing influence across multiple policy areas, few Canadians are aware of the IIU's reach or the extent to which their behavior is being subtly shaped by design, right? So, wow, Privy Council runs psychological unit to shape Canadians' behavior. Shouldn't we have a government that's not employing psychological behavior units to deploy on the Canadian citizens? Because I sure as heck want to make my own decisions, not influenced by government of one stripe or another. I want to be able to make decisions based on what I know to be right and moral and what I want the government to do, not what the government wants me to want them to do. Does that make sense? And so if they're running these kind of offices, that's highly inappropriate, probably illegal. And if it isn't already encoded in law that it should be illegal, and I think probably it is, like, you should not run psychological experiments on your own citizens. That should be already there. Maybe they repealed it. We should restore that kind of stuff and make sure that people who do this are held accountable for the crimes that they're committing. Holy smoke, right? They shouldn't be able to do that. That's crazy town. Gosh, how much time are we on here? 30 minutes. Okay, we're doing all right. Okay, we'll do this one. And yeah, we'll do this one and then we'll finish up. Andy Lee says, you all donated $45 million to a nonprofit in London last year to promote gender responsive investments in infrastructure by providing targeted technical assistance to support gender lens investments and documents and share lessons learned on gender and infrastructure. So this is private infrastructure development, $45 million. And I don't know, London, England. So Sadiq Khan's London is getting $45 million from the government of Canada for the gender responsive investments in infrastructure. Does London, England need 45 million of our tax dollars? This is what I mean by 1.7 million is like a toe clipping of the body of spending in Canada at this point in time, because we don't have a budget. So that's 45 million. Here's Pascal. He says, can someone give one good reason we're sending 14.6 million to Kathmandu to promote the development and implementation of gender responsive climate policies? Kathmandu, NP, Nepal. Is that Kathmandu is Nepal? Working primarily with women. This one aims to support communities and indigenous peoples groups and local institutions to design and implement gender-responsive interventions to improve springheads management, address water scarcity, and provide renewable energy technology for irrigation systems. They seek to promote the development and implementation of gender-responsive policies, strategies, and guidelines by local government institutions to enable the scaling up of the approach. So it's really important that you understand the sex of the well. Right? If you want water, we need to understand if this is a male well or a female well, I guess. Welcome to Canada, where we don't understand basic biology. Womp womp. Andy Lee again, she says, while you were preparing your taxes, you also paid $5 million to review and update the Mongolia Gender Equality Strategy. Yep, $5 million, $4.9 million. The Toronto Star didn't get $5 million, right? But I mean, they're not a whole country, right? Mongolia got it. But activities include, 1, deliver capacity building workshop for Ministry of Education staff on creating a national vocational qualification framework. 2, conduct a stakeholder consultation with Ministry of Education and training institutes to understand the requirements of quality assurance systems. 3, review and update the Mongolia Gender Equality Strategy for technical and vocational training and education. This seems like a bribe to make sure that our gender garbage is exported with a whole bunch of money to make sure it greases the wheels and gets to as many unsuspecting people as possible. Here's another one. Andy Lee says, imagine getting $250,000 from taxpayers to form a committee to figure out how to write funding proposals using woke buzzwords to keep on getting government grants from taxpayers. Don't tell me we can't cut spending. Yeah, we can. So this is another one. We actually give taxpayer grants, says Andy Lee, to special interest groups to teach other people how to grift and get grants too. $264,000 to train other people on getting LGBT-friendly grants. Wild. Absolutely wild. Completely inappropriate. Absolutely criminal, right? Like, you couldn't do this. You wouldn't be able to do this kind of stuff, right? Come on. Melissa says, isn't it wild that Justin Trudeau and his team inflicted so much damage and fiscal mess, yet zero accountability for such decisions? Zero. The Globe and Mail says Carney inherited a fiscal mess from Trudeau and he is set to make it worse. Yeah, he's set to make it worse. We all knew that that's what he was going to do. That's his job. Table Salt says major breaking exclusive massive Canadian deficit spending. Department of Finance documents reveal that the government of Canada needs to borrow $147 billion. I heard the deficit was $92 billion. Now it's $150 billion. Oh, that's a little bit high. In new funds in 25-26, this number is far in excess of any figure that has been released so far. Whew, that's pretty high. And so this is from Canadian